A big day of severe weather is ahead across the central and southern plains, where several tornadoes, with even a few being strong, damaging winds, and large hail will all be possible today. And this is going to begin as early as this morning and run all the way through the afternoon and early evening hours. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about this severe weather event and why it is going to be very impactful to many people today. Let's begin with what's happening across the United States this morning. And overall, there's been tons of showers and thunderstorms over the last 36 hours. We've had over a dozen tornadoes, most of them being in Oklahoma. But overall, a lot of what we're seeing right now is just a ton of moisture that is lifting to the north and northeast, which will dump several inches of rainfall today, anywhere from the Midwest back into the southern plains. And we're going to see even more storms initiate over the next few hours, which will lead to additional rainfall, and it will also lead to the problem of there being severe weather. Now, for the rest of the country, things are relatively quiet. The East Coast is looking quiet for right now. The West Coast also quiet, and it's also colder over that direction. I also want to point out that there is an area that we are watching for in the Caribbean Sea, which is going to be named Tropical Storm Rafael, and that'll be moving into the Gulf of Mexico as we go later into this week. It is expected to become a hurricane. We'll talk more about that later in this forecast and especially in tomorrow's video. Now, let's begin with what the severe weather outlook is for today, and the Storm Prediction Center has issued a large enhanced risk for severe weather. This does include southwestern Missouri, western Arkansas, North Texas, and as well as central, southern, and eastern Oklahoma, where all modes of severe weather are expected today, including the potential for a few tornadoes, which a few of those could also be on the strong side of things, significant damaging winds, and also the potential for large to even potentially very large hail. There is a slight risk as well from about St. Louis back into central Texas, and a marginal threat that goes into western Illinois, and also back down into parts of South Texas. Now, here's the wind threat for today. We are expecting numerous damaging winds, especially in the red shaded area, which is anywhere from about Joplin and as well as Springfield, Missouri, all the way back into northeast Texas, includes western Arkansas and as well as eastern Oklahoma. Our hail threat is on the lower side of things. I wouldn't be surprised if we have one or two storms that produce hail around 2 inches in diameter, but for the most part, most of the hail should be on the smaller side of things, around quarter to $half size variety. And then the tornado risk for today is elevated, and it's also a relatively large area where it is elevated. You'll notice that we have a large hatched area for tornadoes today. That means that strong tornadoes are possible anywhere in that hatched area, which extends from Joplin, Missouri, back into western Arkansas near Fort Smith. Oklahoma City is included in this, just east of Lawton, back into parts of southeastern Oklahoma, and just north of Dallas and Fort Worth is where we could see the potential for a few strong tornadoes today. But anywhere in the green, brown, or yellow shaded areas, we could see several tornadoes today. So we need to make sure if you're anywhere in this area that you have multiple ways to receive alerts and you have a tornado action plan ready to go for today. We are expected to be live today, so make sure you're subscribed down below and click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live. And we think today will be a very busy day. I think we might be live as early as 11 a.m. this morning, and it's going to run probably all the way until this evening. So it's probably going to be a very long day ahead. Now, the tornado threat for today will really ramp up as we go later into the morning hours. This is where we actually will have a potential over the next few hours for a couple of tornadoes across central and southern Oklahoma, back into north central Texas. Eventually, by the mid-morning hours, that tornado threat will start to increase back over in central and southern Oklahoma. So right around 8, 9, 10 in the morning, we are going to be watching for the potential for a few tornadoes. So we could be live again as early as 9 or 10 a.m. this morning if needed. By 11 to 12 o'clock, this will continue in central and southern Oklahoma as an ongoing tornado threat, and eventually as we go into the early afternoon hours, this tornado threat is going to just continue throughout parts of eastern Oklahoma, north Texas, and eventually this will move into parts of southwestern Missouri, eastern Oklahoma, and western Arkansas around 5 or 6 o'clock. But notice how high those tornado parameter values are. They are going to be pretty impressive today, and I do think we're going to have several tornadoes throughout the daytime today. By around 7 to 8 o'clock, there will still be an existent tornado threat, but it will start to go down by around sunset tonight and just after sunset. By 9 to 10 o'clock, we could still have another tornado or two, but I think overall, as we go into the overnight hours into Tuesday, this tornado threat will eventually start to really diminish. So for the timing today, we already have storms out there. Most of them are just wind related, but we also could see a couple of tornadoes. Right around 8 o'clock is when I think we're going to start to see at least some initiation of rotating storms. I think we're going to start to see that tornado threat ramp up by 10 to 11 o'clock, especially near the Red River Valley and in North Texas. Those are the areas that we need to watch watch for very closely. By lunchtime and just after lunchtime, though, is when this thing is going to really kick into gear. I think we're going to start to see several rotating storms that are all capable of producing a tornado in this line of storms here. By around 2 to 3 o'clock, this continues to push east towards eastern Oklahoma, northeast Texas, and as well as western Arkansas. And eventually by the late afternoon and early evening hours, we are watching probably for around the peak of the strong tornado threat in parts of western Arkansas. By eventually around 8, 9 o'clock tonight, these storms continue to move eastbound. Most of these will just be wind related anytime after 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. Now, I do think a moderate risk is in play for today, so keep that in mind. Don't be surprised if we have a moderate risk for tornadoes today. I also want to point out that this could bust technically still when it comes to the tornado threat. It's not a slam dunk forecast. The storm mode is one of the biggest key aspects to today. If we have enough semi-discrete and discrete supercells, this threat is going to be big, but if it's more linear and it stays linear and kind of messy, this tornado threat might not be materialized. So just keep that in mind. There is a chance that this is not a 100% guaranteed forecast, but I do think we have a pretty good chance here today that we are going to be seeing a tornado outbreak in the central and southern plains. We are going to be live again later today on the channel, so make sure you're subscribed down below and click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live. I also want to show you a higher end scenario. This is the RRFS model, and this one is going to show you some higher end scenarios here, and it actually shows by 10 to 11 o'clock this morning several supercells that are rotating around in North Texas and into southern Oklahoma, and this is where we're going to be watching for that initial tornado threat from about 10 a.m. until about 4 p.m. this afternoon. We even could see some storms out in front of that fire up as long as the atmosphere is destabilized back over in eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas around in just after lunchtime. This continues by around 3 to 4 o'clock, though. Again, notice how many supercells there are out there on this particular model. Again, it's a higher end scenario, so it's going to show you pretty much worst case scenario, but this is something that we need to keep in mind for today. Eventually by 6 to 7 o'clock, again, notice how this becomes much more linear, which means that this should turn more into a wind threat across Arkansas and as well as Texas, and eventually overnight into Tuesday, the threat of severe weather is really just diminishing in general. And another big thing that this storm is going to be bringing is tons of rainfall. A lot of rain is going to be falling over the next 24 hours, anywhere from the Midwest back into the southern plains, including Arkansas, where several inches of rain are likely. This is a closer view of where the highest rainfall accumulation is expected, mostly in central and western Arkansas, southern Missouri, and as well as eastern Oklahoma, and also into parts of eastern Texas. Could see a widespread 3 to 6 inches of rainfall when this is all said and done. And yes, guys, this graphic is real. We do have a tropical storm that is forming right now in the Caribbean Sea, and this is expected to become a hurricane over the next couple of days. As of right now, it is going to be approaching Jamaica by tomorrow morning as a tropical storm, and eventually as we go into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, we think that this will be making a run at hurricane status. There are hurricane watches in effect just northwest of Jamaica. Eventually by Wednesday morning, we are expecting this to be a hurricane, likely a Category 1 hurricane, and it's going to make it pretty far into the Gulf of Mexico as at least a Category 1 hurricane. Here's the good news, is that this is expected to weaken due to cooler water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's likely to move pretty far to the west and then eventually turn to the north somewhere into either Texas or Louisiana. We could still see some impacts to Florida, but I think it's a very low chance that we're going to see any direct landfall there with the current weather pattern that's forecasted. We are going to have a more detailed breakdown on this in our next forecast because there will be impacts to the United States. So make sure you stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and again, we'll probably be live later today, so we should see you in a little bit.